Hello and welcome to Kikkoman India's Make It More Delicious podcast. Today we have an amazing guest, Chef Zafar-san, who's a dear friend, who is the first person on our podcast. So Zafar-san, welcome to our show. Thank you so much for making time. I know you're a very busy man. Maybe we can start by you explaining within 30 minutes about who you are, what you do. Perhaps, maybe 30 minutes is not enough for your illustrious career, but we've been great friends and we actually met at a bar. But maybe you can talk a little bit about yourself and where you are right now, how you've been working with Kikkoman, a few things like that.
So thank you, Harry. It's always a pleasure to be with you and in your company. You're right. We met at a bar and for some reason we became friends. And I've always been a fan of Kikkoman, which is, I think, what drove this friendship together. I started off my cooking career late in life. I had two other careers before that. And I like to eat and I like to cook and I like to experiment. So I started cooking and I ran a small catering company in San Francisco.
Right.
And then I got into private dining. And then when I moved to India during COVID, all I did was continue my private dining experiences.
You cook some amazing food.
Thank you. I always try to push the envelope and cook along the edge of food. But I think it's important for me and it's important to understand that, for me, it's about cooking along the edge, about cooking things that are undiscovered, unknown, and understanding the history of food, which I think is important.
So you are a self-taught chef, if I may ask.
Yes, I have. You actually can't call me a chef because I don't belong. The degree does not belong to me. I've actually learned by myself. I learned through eating, I learned through cooking, I learned through experimentation, I learned through my large cookbook library that I have.
And this is hundreds of cookbooks I think I have seen in your residence.
I'm embarrassed to talk about them, but yes. And I'm very proud of my cookbook collection. And I think it's important to understand that today's chefs that are coming out of the IHMs and the schools today are also learning some excellent skills coming out there. And they're being at the cutting edge of food. And I learned this the hard way while they have an easy way to get to where it's taken me decades to get to.
Yeah. How long has the journey been for your culinary expertise to be developed over multiple cuisines and multiple best ingredients are using?
I have been cooking now for over 15 to 18 years. It started off more as a passion and a hobby, and it's now turned into an obsession.
Right.
And so it's, been a slow curve, and it's about learning and experimenting. Having a lot of friends who are guinea pigs who will come and try whatever I cook, and putting it in front of them. And, it's about learning from mistakes, and it's learning to say, hey, we tried this, it didn't work, but I'm a scientist also. So by training. So I used to go back and look at what went wrong. Why did it go wrong? How can I fix this? Or how can I do this better? So I've been doing this for about 18 years on my own, but more obsessively and passionately as an individual, not as a trained chef with a commercial enterprise in mind.
So we've had many conversations in the last few years since we had our first drink. I think it was in Hyderabad.
Yes.
And I used to work for Richard Branson.
Yes.
And Richard Branson is a self-taught man. I mean, he I think didn't go to school. I mean, he didn't graduate, but he's built a very interesting empire on his own. But I think self-taught chef or cook or, somebody who does preparation of food, is very powerful, because I know a lot of chefs around the world who may not have had a professional education, but may make some of the best dishes. And I've had some of my best meals with you, in your residence. And, we've done a lot of projects together as well. But I think this sort of variety of experiences, plus the fact that you come from a scientific background, for us from Kikkoman, we were interested to see if we could hear your story, because it is something that is a very interesting perspective that is not offered by a chef who has gone through the traditional means of education, apprenticeships, and moving up the ranks.
So, yes, thank you. That's a very interesting comment and question. I'm not alone. There are thousands of chefs all around the world who haven't trained professionally, but yet become very successful and run fabulous restaurants. And it's a passion with all of us. It's a passion. It's a need to do something that we enjoy doing. I think that's where it all comes from, is the enjoyment of doing it. And for me, it's always, I think, a way of bonding with people, is feeding them and showing that hospitality to people. Um, but yes, it also gives me a way to think about how how I cook and why I cook, and to understand the reactions that go on in a pot when it's steaming or frying or whatever it is. There's science about Maillard reactions, there's science about chemical formulas, there's understanding the biology of the tongue and taste. So there's a lot that goes into understanding food, and I think it's important for chefs to take the whole picture rather than just focus on the plate that they put in front of guests, because that plate needs to be fabulous, consistent all the time.
And I think you're coming from an international, global perspective, but also being Indian at heart. And you've been obviously working around the world, crisscrossing the world. I think you were flying, 5 times a week at some point in your career. But if I may, I want to dive in and ask you a few questions in a little bit. Some of them are going to be open, but obviously you're a business owner and obviously a chef, shall we say, a seasoned, self-taught chef. What were your key reasons for choosing Kikkoman soy sauce? And maybe you can share your perspective from a comprehensive viewpoint, including, say, taste, price, customer satisfaction, and any other relevant factors.
Thank you. That's a very important question about how and why I became a chef. And I said this has been a long journey for me. It started in the US many years ago. And it started with me traveling the world, eating some of the best cuisines. And I don't mean just Michelin-starred restaurants, but off the streets, in regular restaurants, going to bistros, going to the little cafeterias in Italy and eating there, in Spain, etc. So Europe, Asia, you name it. So what's important for me is understanding the food, understanding its history, understanding where it came from. And in the US, Kikkoman was a big brand. I was aware of it. You walk into the grocery stores and Kikkoman, is there in front of me. So I always bought Kikkoman just because I was aware of the brand and understood about it. But then as I learned to cook, what really became important to me was the fact that I wanted to cook food that was healthy. As you said, I was a consultant. I was flying all over the world. And eating in restaurants. I was on a plane, 300 to 330 days a year. And I realized I had to maintain a lifestyle and not just go crazy. So I began to really focus and understand cuisine and ingredients and health, etc. And what really stood out to me about Kikkoman when I looked at labels, which is very important to me, is ingredients. What ingredients go into a dish that I'm making? What ingredients are on my plate? How fresh are they? Where do they come from? Are they processed? How are they made? And I think more recently, where they come from. Because, people say, oh, we made this, but nobody can tell you where it's made, how it's made, what's the quality of the food, etc. So throughout my career, I made this a focus of how I cooked and how I brought dishes to the table. So when I do curated dining at home, it's very important for me to put natural, fresh product in front of my clients and friends and family. So Kikkoman was chosen because of its ingredients, and we'll talk more about that. I know we'll get more deeper into that. Price was not important to me. For me, the value was my health, and I was willing to pay a premium for it. In the US, whenever I started, but also in India. But today I've realized in India, it's really not a price point difference. The value comes in how the ingredients and how healthy they are for me.
How is this interplay between, say, taste and price and satisfaction?
I think there's a hierarchy there. It starts with taste. It actually starts with visual look. We'll talk about visual look, I know, later on. We've had many discussions on visual look of food, and I think it's important. For me, when a person looks at a dish, it must look appetizing. It must look healthy. The first thing a dish to me must look is healthy. When I go into a restaurant in India and I see this layer of oil, I am automatically like, oh my God, do I really want to eat this and put this in my body? The second is, how does it taste? So sometimes taste and look can clash with each other. It may not look good, but it may actually taste fantastic. So that's important to me. But the third thing is value. If the taste and look are good, there is no value, because that itself is important to me. As I said, I'm a very healthy cook. I like to know what I'm
you're
eating.
saying that the color or the visual look and the taste comprise the value. That's what you're saying, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And if it tastes good and it looks good, I am willing to pay a premium for it.
So price comes later
Is the last
in your calculation.
It's the last in my calculation.
And then how is that related to say your customer or the person who eats your food, whether it's the family or friends or paying customers? How is that related to satisfaction?
When I curate a meal and I put a number of dishes out on the table, I always think about flavor. Flavor is important. How do these flavors play with each other? You've had a dinner at home. How do these flavors play with each other? How does the previous dish help the next dish? And how does that dish help the dish that comes after this? So flavor is critical to a meal and to a person's enjoyment. So what drives flavor in my mind is good ingredients. If you have great ingredients, you automatically have good flavor. Otherwise, what you're doing is compensating for bad additives, chemicals, preservatives that are in food. And you need to change your food and change your recipes to adapt for that.
So as a chef, price is obviously important, but it's not the primary raison d'etre. It's not like the reason why you would or you would not use an ingredient, because it fits into the food cost calculation anyway. I mean, soy sauce, we're talking about 1 tablespoon or 2 tablespoons or 1 teaspoon of the case it may be.
Yeah. So the question you've asked, I think, belongs in two categories.
Sure.
I'm a very small guy. I cook curated dining for 8 to 10 people. It's very high end. I do something that's very unique. So for me, cost is not a factor, because my cost is driven by other ingredients that I buy that are very expensive. So the soy sauce cost is not really a big factor in it. But I think when you go to restaurants, the commercial restaurants across India, they're using large volumes of soy sauce. So cost does become important to them. Because, if I'm using a tablespoon, it doesn't matter. But when I use 5,000 liters a week, it's a big cost to them. And it's a significant portion of their recipe. So there are two customers here. And I'm, a little, top of a needle in a haystack kind of person, with the main customer being, these chain restaurants and the large restaurants that have large volumes. For them, cost becomes important. But they also need to focus on food and quality and ingredients.
Great. So you've also talked a little bit about these trends, like trends towards health, towards sort of better ingredients, understanding the origin, reading the label, better satisfaction, feeling good, etc. But like India is obviously a rapidly growing economy, and so a lot of interest in India, not only for Kikkoman, but for hundreds of thousands of other companies around the world. But you've witnessed many food trends in India. And what are the significant changes happening in India right now that you may wish to talk about?
This is a lovely question. I love this question. So Indian food the food industry and Indian food is massively growing. There's actually been like a volcano of activity.
Mhm.
Indian chefs, Indian restaurants are getting Michelin stars. We're getting Trisend got a Michelin star in Dubai. Chefs are being recognized all over the world. World's top 50 are recognizing Indian chefs, recognizing India as a destination to go to for food. There's been massive change. And the chefs that have gone out, the chefs that are being trained by the IHMs are coming out with such talent. These are brilliant guys. They know their stuff. They're passionate. They love what they do. You know, in the old days when you told your mom and dad you want to become a chef, they're like, "Ha, jaake babarchi banao." You know, it was kind of looked down on. But today, people have that passion. They recognize it. They understand it's a career that people can do well in. And these guys are very, very passionate about it. What's also happening is that people are traveling. They're going all over the world. They're tasting flavors. They're tasting dishes. They are coming back and they say, "We want to have this at home." We went to Japan and we had an omakase experience. I want to have an omakase. I want to take my friends out to an omakase experience or eat pasta carbonara in Bangalore or Bombay or wherever you are, right? Or have this pizza in Florence. Why can't we get it this way, right? So people are coming back. Their mind, their brain, their palates are all opened up now. And they want these experiences to come to India. So the chefs and the consumers are changing. And I think they're working in harmony together and coming together somewhere in the middle to build these experiences and restaurants in India. The Indian scene is massively exploding. I live in Bangalore, and the restaurants in Bangalore are popping up every day. There's so many cuisines there. Let's talk about Southeast Asian just because of today's topic. In Bangalore today, it started off with the old Indo-Chinese, which is still the most popular. It's the most common restaurant in India, by the way. But today there is also Japanese. There's a lot of Japanese. There is Burmese. There is Vietnamese. There is Cambodian. There's fusion. There is Malaysian, Singaporean. You name it. The dishes are coming from all over the world into India, and people crave it. They want to go to it. So that's a great change. However, the negative side to that is that Indians love food. There's something that is universally true. Indians all over the world love food. What the Indians need to have and the chefs need to teach Indian consumers is about ingredients. We need to learn more about what goes into making a dish. So understanding ingredients, understanding health, understanding the effect chemicals, preservatives, coloring agents, etc., that are coming in and being imported in large volumes today are doing to our health and doing to how they're added to our cuisine and what they do to our health today. So that, I think, is something that we are not very good at. Yet. So I think there needs to be a big change in how we perceive health. You go to an Asian restaurant today, I still think 60, 70, 75% of the menu is deep fried. I mean, I've never eaten so much sushi in my life that's deep fried. It's amazing. And I go to a sushi restaurant, I sometimes can't find a raw dish to eat. So that's where I think there's a pro, and I think there's a massive pro. It's a change. It's a lovely change. I love it. But we also Indian consumers need to understand health versus what's going into their food and how it affects them.
So these significant changes are currently happening, but where do you see it evolving? Are you positive about the change? What do you see? Is there a good prognosis for the evolution of Indian cuisine as the Indian economy matures, develops, further dominates the sort of global market?
Yes, so that's a very nuanced question, and it's always a question that gets me into trouble, by the
way. Go on.
So there's tremendous potential in India. It is growing tremendously. We talked about the opportunity in India for everybody in the food industry. But we have a lot of legacy food in India. And we have generations of people and generations of restaurants that have been successful doing what they've done for the last 10 to 50 years. We had a lovely meal at Bukhara the other night,
Yes.
right? And that's a
Beautiful.
restaurant that has been doing the same thing for decades. It's still lovely, it's still beautiful, the food is fabulous, but you have thousands of chains and restaurants that do this, that are dependent on what they know. And the resistance to change is tremendous. And the resistance to change is tremendous because they're afraid of loss of customer base. They say our customers come here because they're used to a flavor, they're used to a style, they're used to a thing that we provide them, whether that be ambiance or the style of food or the cuisine. But consumers are changing.
Mhm.
On the other hand, there is the older set of consumers who want to go back for the same thing, but the modern consumer is changing. They're traveling more, they're getting more aware of their food, they want healthier food, they want less grease, they want more natural products. And I think there's going to be that dichotomy where I think some of these restaurants are going to be forced to change, because when their old base of customers no longer is available, they are going to not have new customers come in because they haven't adapted. So that is going to be the dichotomy, and that I think is where the restaurants that have so legacy customers and legacy brands need to make a change. We all know in the food industry, if you don't adapt and you don't change, you die.
Mm.
It's been shown thousands of
But
times.
that's exactly, it's not only in the restaurant industry. History always is a creative, destructive process,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Nothing ever lasts forever.
yeah,
And I think in my conversations with chefs, they said, well, you used to use, say, Kolkata-based so-called soy sauces. Then they moved to another imported brand. And then now they're moving to Kikkoman. And they're legacy brands. They've been around for 50 years. So I think change is always possible, and change is obviously something that takes time, but then evolution is happening not only in our lives, but it's also happening in cuisine, it's happening in all facets of our life. And
Yeah.
I always use this example. If you want to go from A to B, if there was only, you could walk from A to B, you would walk. But if you want to do that 6,000 kilometer journey to Japan from India, but you can fly.
yeah,
Would you want to fly?
yeah,
I mean, it's like, then you think, but between walking and flying, there were so many other things, right?
yeah.
So, but everything progresses and evolves over time. And it's a little bit of a radical expression to say.
But I think the forces driving that change are important.
Mm.
It's not just a want for them to change. I think they're being forced to change. The consumer is forcing them to change. These legacy brands are so afraid of using a small percentage because of change, rather than saying we will attract a much larger base because now our food has suddenly become healthier. And there are various mediocre models in between. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be, black or white. There's various shades of gray in there. But you're absolutely right. It's a multiple driven thing. Availability of ingredients is number one. The second is consumers. Third is changing palates. And the fourth is actually a moral compass that a lot of these restaurants need to have to say, do I want to still give them the same food that we know has not been that healthy, and change an eating habit to make it more healthiness? It becomes from a consciousness of trying to feed people better. I know in Japan, they take a lot of effort, right from all the way in school, to teach the kids about health.
Yes. And I think if I wanted to tie this together, I think healthiness is also linked to good, tasty food. If you know what I mean. If you have the satisfaction of healthy food is related. If you're having something that tastes good, that's more healthy, that's better, right?
So you're absolutely right. So there are 2 or 3 concepts here. One is healthy food doesn't taste good. There's always this misconception, right? I mean, if you tell, I have a group of friends, if I tell them, let's go to a vegan restaurant, they'll expel me from the group, right?
Mm.
Because it's, for them, it just doesn't connect, right? They want meat heavy, rich food. And, and so the idea here is to convince people, and it's very interesting that I myself say that, because I come from a country, India, which I'm very proud of, that has one of the largest, most diverse vegetarian cuisines in the world.
Yep.
I mean, you can give a potato to a village, and every village cooks it differently in 10 different ways. So the variety is infinite in India with vegetables. But yet, meat has become such a luxury and such a mindset that people are forgetting that healthiness can be tasty. And that's where it comes in, to understand that healthiness is also what you put in your ingredients, how fresh they are, what are they made of. If you're adding a compound or a chemical, or if you're adding a source of an ingredient that is filled with preservatives, coloring agents, all kinds of junk, it's not going to taste good. It's not going to be healthy. It's a very simple truth that we don't talk about.
Right. So, Zafar-san, we talked a lot about some interesting topics, and I think I've learned a lot from your perspective. But I want to do a more deeper dive into soy sauce in terms of, and it's not only soy sauce; it's like ingredients. So I have this thing that chefs, because I go to chefs and owners every day, and they always say, the chefs and restaurant owners always say, and customers also assume, the best use the best. Hmm? Is this the case in your experience in the world of cooking outside of India? And how about in India? And how can one ensure that chefs and owners owe up to this simple yet potentially a minefield of a complex phrase?
It's a very important question. And it's a very difficult question to answer. And I'm sure by the time I answer this question, I'll piss a hell of a lot of people off. So in my mind, your statement is true. The best use the best. And if you go to the best restaurants in the world and in India, the best chefs are always looking for great ingredients, farm to table, best meats, Banur mutton in Bangalore. And the ingredient list is fabulous. But this is in the best restaurants, in the very upscale, this thing. But you got to remember that 80 or 85% are the mass restaurants, right? They are driven not by the need to provide flavor and quality, but to feed masses. So the best chef will always use the best ingredient because he is a little bit price insensitive, because he's charging a lot for this food. These are the best, all the greatest rated restaurants and the five-star restaurants in India. But the masses get food in large volumes. Now, these guys are money conscious. For them, the biggest thing is, how much does my dish cost and how much profit am I making on it? And to be frank, in the Indian market, the margins are very, very thin. And so they want to make as much of this as they can, because at the end of the day, it's business for them. So they will, use a cheaper brand simply to save on costs. They will take shortcuts just to, things like cooking a sauce. If it takes less time, they will actually do that because it saves on gas. And you're talking hours and days of work and labor and etc. So that equation is very complex. However, so for the very few ingredient, the best use the best is absolutely true. For the rest, it is they use whatever is available and whatever is cheapest. In my mind as a chef, I always think that there is a responsibility for the chefs, even in the mass, to improve their ingredients. And we're seeing this trend slowly come into India. You had the old legacy Indo-Chinese restaurants. Let's focus on that. The Nankings, etc. We don't know what went into their dishes, but now you have the Mama Gotos, etc. that have come in that are more upscale. The food is a little bit better, but there's a mystery of what goes into them. The biggest driver, as I've already said this before, is the consumer, because they're going to start asking these questions. When I go in with friends, and the first question they ask in a Chinese restaurant or any Asian restaurant is, do you use MSG? And they will not go to that restaurant anymore because they do not want to go to these places. They're allergic to it. They don't believe in it. They don't want these chemical things. So that is a change that needs to come. And I think what Indian chefs don't do well is communicate about the ingredients they use. You go to the better restaurants, they come out and talk about food and where they've got it. They talk about ingredients. We sourced scallops from here. We sourced mutton from here. We sourced things from, or this ingredient or this vegetable or whatever it may be. But at the base level, they don't talk about this. In the West, I see this law happening a lot more. We can talk about, farm to table restaurants. We get our lettuce from this farm. We get our eggs from this hatchery. We get our meat from this farm. We get our, radishes from this thing, our fruit from here. I mean, nobody even talks about uti carrots, which are delicious, because all they're doing is cutting costs. Now, if a restaurant said, I actually use uti carrots, people will come to it because they'll say, oh my God, look at her. This is a farm to table restaurant. And that's one of the biggest changes in India.
No, so when I look at this point about this cost consciousness, and I also, in a different wearing hat, I also run a, small QSR business as well. Which is in the sushi business as well. So I'm also very conscious about costs, and I'm also conscious about value. But when you were talking about this sort of cheaper ingredients or cheapest ingredients for a business which is at 85% of, say, the masses, if, for example, say it's Chinese food, right? You can't cook Chinese food without soy sauce. Now, wouldn't it be natural for even at that level of sort of the masses, should they not be considering using as an essential ingredient something like a quality Kikkoman product?
Yes. And I'm sure you get this question all the time. I know we face this question all the time. How much does it cost? What is going to be my cost structure? For them, the biggest thing is cost structure for the restaurants. But even consumers, I have friends and groups that I go out for food with. I mean, they will literally go to a restaurant because they will spend 200 rupees less on dinner. And for them, it's a mental mindset, right? To say, why should I spend this on dinner? The perceived value of a better ingredient, the perceived value of a better flavor is, in a lot of Indians' minds, offset by cost. There's still that very, very deep-rooted relationship between, it has to be cheaper. And if it's cheaper, it's okay if it's not the best. I will make do with it. This is where we talked about education. The Indian mindset, I think, needs to be a lot more aware of how the biology of the body and how these chemicals and processes work. And so how feeding it better things is actually better for you. And I always say, hey, you can always go to a cheaper restaurant, but the first heart attack you get offsets all your food costs you've saved over decades of not eating healthier food.
Interesting. I mean, it is actually a minefield, as I was saying, this cost issue. And I always try to explain to our customers, as well as anybody who cares to listen, is that everybody talks about cost without talking about value. It should be the other way around, where there's value and then there's price, if you know what I mean. But the discourse is only about price, which I think India is also evolving. I think things will change over time. And obviously, price is important. It's no denying that. But once the discussion moves from price to value, when an essential ingredient for, like, say, Chinese food is soy sauce, then one would expect you to use a better product if it's going to do better work for you to make the dish more delicious.
So you bring up a topic that's very dear to me. When I cook, the first thing I look for is flavor. How is my dish going to taste? I am completely oblivious to cost. But as I said, I'm a small guy who does a very unique thing in India. But when you talk about the masses, it's a big thing because, every rupee they save on a recipe translates to a big bottom line for them. However, you're absolutely right. When you have a conversation about cost, it's a very different conversation than having a conversation about flavor, about saying, hey, does this taste better? It never starts with, is this cheaper? Because they always go down to that level. But the conversation should be about flavor. Do you want to change because your food is better? It tastes better. We've done blind tests. You and I have worked in kitchens and done blind tests. And every single time, 100%, they have always said, this is a better dish. I know what my dish tastes like, but I like yours better.
I think that's a very interesting point because we were having a conversation early in the car with my team where matching the taste, okay, improving the taste, or using a better ingredient, but then the taste becoming worse, what are you going to pick? You're always going to pick better product that gives you better taste.
Yeah.
Right? But the psychology of not only chefs, but say maybe purchasing managers, and obviously many people have moved on and started to use Kikkoman soy sauce in their cuisine, but maybe these purchasing managers stuck at this level, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. So there's a discord between how purchasing is done and how value is perceived in a restaurant. But there are two parts to that equation, right? As we said, during tests, the food tastes better. But they don't want to change because they are afraid of change. It's like any industry around the world. When we changed from manual to computerized, everything is changing today. We're changing from normal to chat GPT. There's a change. People are afraid. The human mindset is about fear, right? What's going to happen? Am I going to do better? Is my business going to fail? They're not worried about the fact that their business is becoming redundant. They're worried about if I lose 1% of my customers, is it going to fail? The fact that in the food industry particularly, there's so much dynamism and change that you cannot afford not to evolve. And so it's that dissonance between purchasing and value needs to be bridged, and the owners need to understand that.
And I think many of the owners are starting to understand that. I mean, I think we're seeing this sort of the trend for that better products, an essential ingredient like Kikkoman soy sauce, adding more value, adding more better taste, not matching the taste, but making the dish tastier.
Better, yeah.
Ultimately gives the customer satisfaction.
Exactly. And as we talked about earlier, not just that MSG satisfaction, but the flavorful satisfaction. It is, I want to come out of a restaurant feeling full but light. I don't want to come out of a restaurant feeling full and heavy and bloated and not being able to eat for another breakfast in the morning because I still feel full.
So, talking a little bit about Kikkoman, if I may. So, we are a 350-year-old enterprise originally from Japan, but now we are selling our soy sauce in over 100 countries. And our journey in India has only been about 4.5 years, so it's still early. So we're looking for the next 30 years, 50 years, 100 years. My remit is to create a business for the next 100 years, and the foundations of that have been laid because of working with wonderful, amazing, interesting people like you and so many other hundreds and thousands of chefs and restaurant owners I've seen in the last 4.5 years. But we at Kikkoman take utmost care and responsibility in producing consistently quality products that enrich people's lives across all these countries around the world through making each dish more delicious, right? Consistency is so important, and it's not easy to sustain consistency over time. And we've been doing it for 350 years. So that has to be a statement in itself. But what thoughts do you have in consistency and quality in ingredients in India and globally?
That's a very interesting question. We've had brands in India that have lasted for many, many decades, and they're institutions now. I always talk about, we've talked about this, and I know we have to make this trip to Uti to go eat at
Yes, we will.
Shinkar's, right? And I grew up as a child eating here, and I go back there, and it's still the same food. 40 years later, it's still identical. Consistency is there. We have brands in India that are highly consistent. And as you said, products that need to come in that we add to food also need to be consistent. Because what we need as a chef, what I need to think about is if I add a tablespoon, I know the flavor I'm adding. I know what it's going to create. If I'm creating a batch of sauce, as a commercial enterprise, I want to make sure every batch for the next 5 years in thousands of liters is going to be taste the same. So having that consistency, and when you talk about thousands of liters of sauce, consistency actually has a value,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if you buy a soy sauce from here versus Kikkoman, you don't know what you're going to get. And you're going to say, hey, I'm going to save 10 rupees, per liter. But at the end of the day, I'm going to get the whole batch rejected because guess what? It doesn't taste like the original. So that's a loss, that's loss in tens of thousands, if not lakhs of rupees, right? Because it's a business. As a chef in the best restaurants across the country, you want to have a sauce that's consistent. I know every bottle is going to taste the same. I know if I add a teaspoon, it's going to give me this flavor. I know if I add a cup, it's going to give me this flavor. I have black books. I have all my recipes in black books. I know my recipe I write a blog. Everybody from around the world says your recipes work every single time because of consistency. And so having that consistency, I think, is critical. And I think one of the mantras you need to talk about more is we can help you save cost because it's going to be the same every single time. We've done it for 300 years. We'll do it for another 300 years. And that's value to a chef and to an institution.
Actually, my friend, Chef Joel, and his mother, Chef Josephine, they run the Yuchu restaurant, which is the oldest running family-run Chinese restaurant in India based in Kolkata. And I was having a conversation with Chef Joel just the other week, and he was saying about consistency that, locally based sauces that he's been using were not consistent. That he will have to add more salt, or he will have to add more sugar, or put some more water, whatever the case is. I'm not a chef, so I don't really know. But interesting, the latest FSSI regulations 2021 and 2022, many of these locally based sauces are not really soy sauce. Did you know that? But are still used in India. So any advice to chefs who say, Kikkoman is only for Japanese food, who keep on using these products?
Yeah. So there are two questions here that you've asked me that I'd like to go back to the previous point first. So in a restaurant, I want to I go in as a consumer to a restaurant. I want my food to taste like the last time I had it. And my father has been eating here and I've been eating here for 20 years. I go there because I crave that flavor. I want that experience I had as a child, right? So consistency is important. If you have products or you're using products that are inconsistent, it's really hard for a restaurant to maintain that consistency of
Right.
flavor. So, which is why you go once, you've gone for 5 years, and the food is fabulous. You love it. You're going to go back, and then you go one day, and it's changed. You say, "Why has this changed?" Either the chef has changed or an ingredient has changed. There are only two basic reasons, and so that causes a restaurant to be in disarray because all of a sudden customers stop going. The second question was
Japanese food.
about Japanese food. Yes, there is this mindset that Kikkoman is Japanese, so we should use it in Japanese food. It's like saying tomato ketchup is American. Why am I eating it with a samosa? Right?
Yeah.
It's exactly the same thing. So we know Kikkoman has a flavor. We understand the flavor. We crave that flavor. It goes into every Pan Asian food in some form or the other. So the ability, I use Kikkoman in stews, in stir fries, in dressings, I even mix it with mayonnaise and use it with artichokes, right?
Yeah.
Togarashi pepper and soy sauce and mayo, and I just use it to dip artichoke in. It's fabulous seasoning that can be used across. And in India, that's important because in India, we're importing so many dishes from around the world, Southeast Asia. They all use soy sauce in one form or the other. So having a consistent soy sauce for a chef to say, it doesn't matter whether it's Thai or Vietnamese or Cambodian or Burmese, I know the flavor my soy sauce is going to give me is critical.
So let me ask a follow-up question to that. Like, that's from a chef's perspective and a perspective of somebody who's been in the kitchen and who wants to make sure that consistency is there for the consumer to be happy. There's two tangents to that. One is that you want to make sure that the customer is happy with a even better product because everything is evolving, right? You don't have to always match, but we talked about that in our earlier question.
Yeah.
But then the other thing is, if I may say, the choice is, people maybe don't realize that the customers are choosing.
Yes.
The chefs are choosing to use a better ingredient, then you get a better flavor and then better taste and better happiness, better health and all of that.
Yeah.
That upward spiral is there. But for the customer, I think it's like one thing that's really missing in India is customer satisfaction is also evolving, if I may say.
Yes.
The customer is always changing and that taste is also changing.
Yeah.
So there's no need to match the taste. If it's a better tasting with a better ingredient like Kikkoman, then you would expect, and it doesn't have to be in Japanese food, it can be in Chinese food, and it can be in, I don't know, Indian food, it can be in Pan Asian food.
Yeah.
You're all for that, right?
Yes. I think that's a very important point because change is bi-directional, right? It comes from the chefs and from the restaurants, as you said, from the top down, but it also comes from the grassroots up. And customers have been doing this. Even in India, they do it. We talked about MSG, where customers will go in and say, "Are you using MSG?" and they'll walk out. Here, you want the customer to walk in and say, "Why aren't you using Kikkoman?
Yeah.
It's a better product. It's a natural product. It's healthier for me. I want you to make the switch to Kikkoman." All right? Because customers are choosing now. They are becoming aware. Although there still is a way to go, they are becoming more and more aware. There's a large section of customers who, there's yoga, they're exercising, they're taking care of their body, they're going to ashrams, they're, doing so many things for their betterment, right? I know you do yoga every morning, right? For your health. And so customers have become aware of their bodies and their health. And so telling them that them knowing that there is a better alternative, there is a healthier alternative, will make them ask for it.
Great. So Zafar-san, as the Kikkoman, what we call you, expert consultant chef for Kikkoman, I think we called you that. You've done some food trials for us for some major Indian restaurants using Kikkoman. What has been your assessment of the trials, chefs and owners' perceptions before and after the trial, and trials? And what can we learn from these experiences that you've had?
Thank you, Harrison. It's always been a pleasure working with you and Kikkoman and your team. You have such a fabulous team, and it's always been my honor to work with them. So thank you. Including your team in Japan. Always a pleasure to work with all of you. Um, Thank you for including me with some of your clients. We've gone into their kitchens. We've done trials, which usually means I go into their kitchens. We take a couple of dishes. We replicate their dishes, substituting their legacy soy sauce for Kikkoman, and replicate the base sauces or the dishes, and do a blind tasting at the end of it. So there are two or three things that have stood out during these years that we worked together. Uh, the first is in a blind tasting, as we have discussed, the clients and the chefs have consistently liked the Kikkoman flavor better. It's been consistent. There's been no thought about it. The second has been in India, we are very visually driven by how food looks.
Right.
And there is this big, big thing, concept or mindset, I should say. It's actually a very strong mindset that dark soy sauce tastes better. It's a mindset. And
Dark looking
dark looking
dishes.
And so this comes from a legacy history of Indo-Chinese food, because they've had these dark soy sauces which are chemically made, and so the color is dark. It's a black dish that comes out. The fried rice comes out black, and although they're tasting a better dish, what they are afraid of is that my customer is going to visually see a dish that looks different and they're going to get unhappy. So their hesitation to substitute, and we spent a lot of time, and I know I have work that I owe you to do it for some time now, and I apologize for that, is to try and replicate color. At our point, it is no longer about flavor. We all agree the flavor is better, but they want to visually replicate the dish. And it is a challenge for them because they are afraid, and the mindset for change is not there. To say, hey, we've made a change. The food may look different, but actually it tastes better. So change in these big institutions needs to come in two phases. One, better flavor, which they agree on, but two, also telling their customers we've made a switch for better, for healthier. And yes, we know the color looks different, but our food is actually healthier and better for you today.
Interesting. Now, looking at sort of, I like the word truth, because truth is never pure or simple, or you know what I mean. It's so multifaceted, and not also easy. What can you say about the status quo of ingredients in India, i.e., the level of training, capability, food culture in India, both at the end user level and the professional chefs level, i.e., people who are delivering the food, and the issues around ingredients in India? I mean, it's a big question.
Yes, it's a very big question. I'm going to try not to be too long-winded about it, but that's hard for me, as you know. But so I think the training, I think the chefs that are coming out, and I know you do a lot of work at the IHMs, is fabulous. The young guys are driven, they're motivated, they learn so much. They want to come out there and cook. It's no longer a profession that's looked down upon. It's actually a career that people are choosing willingly and families are supporting. So I think the chefs that are coming out are wonderful. They're being trained well. They're coming out. They're creative. And we've seen this. They've grown and they're doing so well, not just in India, but around the world. There's opportunity to travel abroad and taste flavors, learn in the best restaurants and intern in them, and then come back and bring that knowledge and bring that mindset to India. I think it's fabulous. The industry is growing and changing for the better because of this. But from the end user perspective, there is change, but it's in a very, very narrow, small bucket in India. It's the people who are very health conscious, who understand food. But as a mass population, we go to eat a meal. We don't really think about what goes into making that dish, right? We want to go and eat at a fast chain restaurant, or we are busy and we go get a burger in a fast chain or a taco in a chain restaurant because it's convenience. Oh, I've been going here for 20 years. I'm going to go back because it's a craving I have. It's something that I want to satisfy. This is where the Indian population, end user, consumer, needs to think more about how can I do better? And that needs to come from thinking about health and well-being. But there is change. We're seeing the old legacy restaurants who don't want to change, who are losing customers to the newer ones that are coming out because they're being more transparent of their ingredients. They're being more transparent of their processes. They're being more transparent about quality.
Very interesting. You're a good friend of mine, and I always ask you for advice. Any advice to share with chefs, restaurant owners, students, even end users at restaurants? Any advice for me or my team?
Firstly, I've always said it's a pleasure to work with you and your team.
That's not
Always
advice.
been. No, but it's true. Whenever you call me and say, "Hey, let's go here and do something," I'm very excited because your
Thank you.
team is such a lovely team, and
Thank you so much.
they've always been treated me very well, and they're fun people to hang out with. So I enjoy that. And we won't talk about the late night drinking. But
No,
that's
no,
another
no.
story.
Off
That's off topic. but there is change coming. There is change is inevitable. Change is inevitable in this world, and so as both people who are importing ingredients into a country, as well as a country that's growing, there is going to be tremendous change in the food and beverage industry. And as consumers, we are changing, whether we know it or not, we are changing. My father went and ate two cuisines when he was growing up. Now he, goes to a Thai restaurant and goes to a French restaurant and goes to an Italian restaurant. And he's 90 years old.
Wow.
Today his palate and his mind has changed, right? So this change is inevitable. I think for me, when I started this, as I've always said, I've been a very conscious person about how I eat and what I eat. Now I eat everywhere. I go everywhere. I'll eat off the street. I'll go to the best restaurants in the world. And I always like to indulge. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong about going and eating a fast food, kind of restaurant
Sure.
where I know the food is crappy, but I still want to eat it because it does
The trick.
the trick. It makes me happy, right? But I want to make decisions about how many times I go to that.
Mhm.
I would rather go to a nice place and eat a good burger where I know the meat has been sourced properly than eat in a fast food chain where I have no idea how it is sourced and made. Those are the active decisions I make about how I eat. And I think more and more consumers are beginning to think that way. They're beginning to think about, where can I source my fruit? Where can I source my vegetables? In Bangalore, where I live, we get vegetables from Ooty, and people are buying that because they know it's healthier and grown under better conditions. There's a big movement for organic that has come into India. It's there here now, mainstay. It's change is inevitable, and so businesses, consumers, restaurants, and importers like yourself have to be aware of this change and adapt with it. If you are aware of it and do nothing, it doesn't matter. You have to adapt with it.
So change, adaptability is the name of the game. For whether you're a restaurant owner or a chef or a customer or people even like Kikkoman, we have to also do better. We have to also think, evolve, and see how, we can sort of bridge the sort of the gap instead of
Yeah.
and do better, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, but the change is not always good.
Mm.
So my heritage and my father is from Hyderabad, and when I go there, I have conversations about my father and with my father about food in Hyderabad. Today, you go around Hyderabad, there were two biryanis that you can find, and one of them is still hard to find. In the old days, my father says he had about a variety of 10 to 15 biryanis. He says there are dishes in Hyderabad that he grew up with that he can't find today.
Mm.
And so change is always not good. I mean, we always think about it and we think about rapid, but there is loss. There's a lot of loss that goes with these changes. And so as a consumer, I go back and I write a blog about cataloging some of these recipes because I don't want them to get lost.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So adaptability has to be part of the game, and bringing back the old ways. Because, Japan and Kikkoman, it's tradition, it's history.
Mm-hmm.
And history plays a big role even in this change because you've done this for centuries. India is a very, very old food culture. And this old food culture continues today, millennia later. We are so fascinated by French food and Italian food. It's 300 years old. We've had food for 2,000 years. And we should be proud about that.
Yeah. And I think I've had some of my best food experiences in India. The food in India is so, diverse and so yummy and so tasty. But on an interesting note, we have had chefs, Indian chefs, Michelin star chefs in London or chefs in Hyderabad saying they're using Kikkoman as a base, what is it called? Marination technique sauce in biryanis.
Yes.
Which is incredible if you think that is happening in the world also. That's also evolution, right?
Yes. It's all part of the same change and evolution, right? It doesn't mean, history is about evolution. Others, they'd be just one page in a history book, right? It's all about change. We food evolves. The story of food is about evolution.
So Zafar, I'm just coming to my last 2 points. I don't know if I shared this with you before. This is 100 reasons why I use Kikkoman.
I have to tick these and say how many of them do I use.
We could do that. But this is a document which I've shared with a lot of friends in India, and they've said, "Oh, because when we go to purchasing manager, it's like, what's the price?" Or I said, no. I say, can you have a look at it? And does your current soy sauce fulfill these 100? And invariably not, because there's many more reasons of using a better product.
Yes.
Than a product that maybe is made locally in India or maybe imported from overseas, which is chemical in nature, or adding additives or artificial colors or whatever the case may be. But what do you think of this? Is this something that for you must have multiple reasons for using a better product like Kikkoman?
Yes, we've talked about that. So I am a chef, so I understand these reasons. I understand it. If you give this to a purchasing agent, he doesn't care. All he cares about is where is the rupee sign right at the bottom here, right? So I think this is great because I would love to read this and I said take it off. Is for a chef, for somebody creative within the industry, because he's the one who's going to make a decision for change. The purchasing guy is going to only look at one thing, and he wants to look at a spreadsheet and a number. He doesn't want to look at creativity. He doesn't want to look at versatility because he doesn't understand it. So this is a great tool for somebody in the decision-making group, the chefs, the creative staff, the researcher people in the consultants who help the chefs build these restaurants and menus. They would find this fascinating.
My team's developed it, and I'm so proud of them, and in conjunction with our team in Tokyo. But there's always a way better, even to do these sort of things. That these ideas I think are very important. And one last thing as I want to share with you is this Kikkoman manga, which is a cartoon manga. What's it called? Comic.
I love manga.
Right?
Yes.
So we just wanted to give this to you as well. So
Thank you.
it's called Varun and
Pramod.
Pramod.
Yes.
And it talks about the fact that, well, I don't want to give the whole story out, but how an essential ingredient like Kikkoman can maybe make or break a restaurant.
Are you going to distribute these manga to kids?
We're going to give it to thousands and thousands and thousands of people around India, including chefs, restaurant owners, and students around India.
As you know, I think what you should do with this is leave it on the table so the kids can read it.
Oh, that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
And then take out these manga thing, the individual pieces of them that look very interesting and action oriented, and give it with crayons so kids can color it, and then they can they can understand Kikkoman because the book is there too, and they can read about it, because that's where the customer from the bottom up starts pulling the product, right? But it's great because I love manga, and I think manga is very popular, especially in that younger teenage group. They all go through this manga phase in the movies and all of that. So I think this is a great way to get people educated about your product.
So lastly, just to end, I mean, you've seen our journey at Kikkoman. How has the journey, and how do you see us growing? How has the journey been last few years? What we should be doing? You gave us a little bit of advice, but since it's the sort of last leg of our podcast, I just wanted you to kind of tell us a little bit about your perceptions about Kikkoman.
So I've been using Kikkoman because I love the sauce, right? And it's a staple in my pantry. If I had an ideal world, it would be in every home's pantry, right? A bottle of Kikkoman would be there, right? And you're making efforts towards that. You're getting it on all the apps now, so that it can be delivered. You can order it at home, etc. I want to see people eat healthier. It's a bigger goal for me, right? I want people to eat healthy. I want people to understand what they consume and how they're consuming this, right? I mean, we take a simple ingredient. 95% of the people eat fried food, but they have no idea what the oil is. Zero. But you go and ask every mom in a kitchen or grandmother in a kitchen, she'll have 6 bottles of oil, and she knows exactly which oil, the sesame oil, the mustard oil, the peanut oil, the regular oil, which dish it goes into. So having that awareness about your pantry needs to come into India.
Right.
And that includes every ingredient from, we all have Himalayan sea salt because it's fashionable, not because we understand how good it is for you.
Right.
So that way, Kikkoman needs to become a household name with soy sauce.
Well, maybe with this podcast, I think we're making one step into that journey. So thank you.
I think it is.
From all of us at Kikkoman.
Thank you,
Thank you, Zafar-san, for a wonderful, wonderful chat.
It's always been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Arigato.
Arigato.